Hey, well, today I'm angry at anonymous sources and by default, the media along with them. And what I'm talking about is the media's recent habit of writing stories where they claim that they have sources, but they refuse to disclose who they are. And they allow these sources to be completely anonymous so they can speak with impunity, say whatever they like. I mean, we've seen this happen over and over, but over the last few years of Donald Trump's presidency, it's gotten especially worse. Let's deal with the most recent incident first. This is a headline that came out on Thursday. This is The Atlantic. September 3rd, 2020, Jeffrey Goldberg writes that Trump said that Americans who died in the war are losers and suckers. Not only that, the very first paragraph reads this way. When President Donald Trump canceled a visit to the Ain Marne American Cemetery near Paris in 2018, he blamed rain for the last-minute decision, saying that, quote, the helicopter couldn't fly and that the Secret Service wouldn't drive him there. Neither claim was true. Okay, it turns out that both claims were true. And we have not just Donald Trump's word for it, we have one of his sworn enemies, John Bolton. Here's a quote from John Bolton's book, where John Bolton himself says that Trump was told not to go, that he couldn't go by motorcade and he couldn't go by helicopter. So the article starts out with that falsehood, and it's easily disproven. First, you have Bolton himself, the sworn enemy of Trump, agreeing with Trump that he couldn't get there, and you have Freedom of Information reports from the Air Force, or at least the department that would have flown Trump to the cemetery, saying that the weather was too dangerous to fly and that motorcades were too dangerous because he couldn't be evacuated from there quickly enough. This story is anonymously sourced. Whether they claim that there are 4 anonymous sources or 40 anonymous sources, none of these people are willing to put their name to the story. And this is very suspicious, specifically because within 12 hours of the story appearing, VoteVets, an organization I hadn't heard of before, had a commercial ready to go, accusing Trump of calling vets losers, etc. How is it possible that they could have prepared that ad if they hadn't been coordinating on the publication of that story? This use of unnamed sources is a travesty, and it's very much in the same vein as the police habit of using jailhouse snitches who conveniently hear confessions in jail and have their sentences reduced in exchange for testifying as to what they claim they've heard. This anonymous source nonsense is the reason why the media has so little credibility today. You may recall a couple of months ago there was some story that the Russians were paying Afghanistanis to kill American soldiers. Another anonymously sourced story, another story that seemed to vaporize upon any inspection whatsoever. How is it that the media is allowed to print such flagrant nonsense? If somebody is willing to put their name behind a story, that's a story. There's no story if anonymous people hypothesize that this or that may be the case, or even claim that it is the case. They're not putting their names behind it. They have no confidence in it. They don't wish to be identified with the story, and the journalists are culpable here. They want to print salacious, sensationalist stories, and they will listen to anybody who has a story to tell and will promise them anonymity and will broadcast the story as fact. Journalists are supposed to fact-check stories. Journalists are supposed to stand behind their stories. How many stories did we see about Russian collusion where anonymous sources claimed that they had proof? It turns out there wasn't any. Where are the apologies? Where are the explanations from the mainstream media that reported all of these stories with a straight face as if it was news when it turned out just to be people with access to grind? And that's really the main problem with this anonymous source nonsense. You have no idea as a journalist if the person giving you the story is telling you a fact, is doing something because they have a political beef with somebody else. You have no idea as to the credibility of this person. All you know is they're not willing to put their name behind it. And we shouldn't give any attention to journalists who print salacious gossip without anybody being willing to put their name on it. If it's a credible story, there'll be a name. Somebody will stand up and say, I'm against this, I'm for this. They'll make a declaration. These anonymous gossip stories have got to end. It'll be the end of journalism if it isn't already. Please, let's read these things, let's look between the lines and wake up.